So without further ado, let's get to the program. We will first hear from Nimrod Novik, IPF's Israel Fellow, best known for serving as a longtime top foreign policy advisor to the late Shimon Peres. We will then hear from Brigadier General Dov Fufi Sadaka, who served as the former IDF head of the civil administration in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip, in the midst of the Second Intifada. Finally, we will hear from Sarah Yurkis, who will also moderate our conversation and lead our Q&A session. Sarah is a former foreign affairs officer at the State Department's Office of Israeli-Palestinian Affairs and is currently a non-resident fellow at the Center for Middle East Policy at the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C. Please join me in welcoming to the stage our guest speakers this evening, Nimrod, Fufi, and Sarah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Susie, and thank you all for inviting us to chat with you on our primary hobby in life, which is Arab-Israeli peacemaking and two-state solution. But before I do that, and you know the risk of giving an Israeli the floor, he doesn't give it back. I would like a personal note. I want to acknowledge the presence here of Elaine Cohen. We all lost a dear friend, a hero of the peace process, an unsung hero of the peace process, as Steve Cohen passed away a few weeks ago. Steve was a close associate of the small group that was fighting for the process from the very early 80s, literally until his last days. He was a model of operation under the radar. Few knew what he was doing, but those who knew that his fingerprints were all over the process from the very early days when he brought Peres and Sadat together, through the initial meetings between Yasser Arafat's envoys and ours. His wisdom, his understanding of the parties, his ability to convey to each party the concerns, aspirations of the other in language that we could understand were unmatched. Unsung hero. He wrote a couple of books. The most recent one was published just shortly before he passed away. Nonetheless, his story is yet to be told. I was asked to start by clarifying what's going to happen on Wednesday when Prime Minister Netanyahu meets with President Trump. So without further ado, I have no idea. Well, with some qualifiers. After all, we are presumptuous, aren't we? And one thing one can be certain about, I think, and that is that this meeting was doomed to succeed. Both leaders have the incentive, each for his own reasons, to demonstrate that it was a very, very happy occasion. Even though there might be some disagreements behind closed doors, but the modus operandi will be what's behind closed doors remains behind closed doors. Something taken from Las Vegas, I believe. From the perspective of both IPF and CIS, I believe that the Trump administration, I hope I don't astonish too many, started on the right foot when it comes to our issue. Campaign promises to move the embassy to Jerusalem and to remove all restrictions from settlement construction gave way to a far more sober approach, made public by the president in person in an interview to an Israeli newspaper. where the issue of Jerusalem is on the back burner, and the issue of settlements got a fairly nuanced approach, which I'll humbly suggest that is more realistic than that we experienced in the previous 8 years. The Obama tenure, both terms, were bookended with two statement or policy enunciations on settlements. The first one was almost on day one, when the administration declared its policy of not a single brick, no construction anywhere. All settlements are equally illegal and therefore should be stopped. The same policy was reiterated in the UN Security Council Resolution 2334, passed a few weeks before the end of the term, with exactly the same terms. All settlements are illegal, none should be pursued. We at CIS never thought that that was a pragmatic or reasonable approach, and indeed, in our Security First plan, we do not recommend a comprehensive, unqualified freeze, primarily for two reasons. One, it's not enforceable. It just can't happen. You cannot have a situation where not a single kindergarten or house is being built anywhere from East Jerusalem and elsewhere. The second one is a very parochial Israeli interest, and that is, if you have today something approximating 600,000 settlers from East Jerusalem, the Jewish neighborhoods, through the blocks and beyond, deciding that all settlements are equally illegal, lump them together, and creates a huge political voice against the peace process. On the other hand, a qualified freeze, the one that is seemingly is being hinted by the Trump administration, one that says that in the blocks that are to be annexed to Israel in any deal, one can continue construction provided no further land is being expropriated for it, and that other settlements are not to be pursued east of the security barrier. Well, we are neither Republicans nor Democrats, and we didn't vote for either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, but months ago we recommended the very same approach, and we were pleased to see that the administration embraced the same approach. In Security First, and in the new booklet that you've been handed by IPF, Security First was the foundation, and the new study or the new presentation accentuates and goes deeper into three elements from Security First and makes them available to the American public, administration, Congress, and general public. Security First originated, and therefore so does the new study, from the realization, and Susie spoke about it, that the two-state solution must not be given up, that the two-state solution will eventually materialize, but conditions are not ripe for making it happen right now. And you can look around and you can decide which of the conditions you endorse, which one you agree with and which you are not. But basically, the menu is quite extensive, and it goes from the Palestinian polity is divided between Fatah and Hamas. The Palestinian leadership is discredited and not legitimized because elections were not taking place in time. Our coalition features a majority that is hostile to the idea of two-state solution, which is an interesting phenomenon because the majority in the coalition, about 40 of them, are a minority in the Knesset. And the fact that they are a majority in the coalition is not an act of God or a natural disaster. It's a choice that was made by a prime minister who opted for his base at the expense of other considerations. Legitimate. I don't share, but legitimate. But that minority, what I call the Gang of 40, presently run policy to the extent that the Prime Minister on occasion has to seek external help in restraining them. And I think we've seen some of that unfolding in the last few weeks and even in the last 24 hours. When we at the CIS were working on the security arrangements for a permanent status situation, for a two-state reality, our objective was to demonstrate to the Israeli public that the brainwashing by fearmongers that security and peace are mutually exclusive is sheer nonsense. That when professionals sit down and start analyzing what does it take to secure a two-state reality, to secure Israel's interest in a two-state reality, when professionals sit down, professionals come up with answers. And we were working on it under the assumption that when you have the overwhelming majority of Israeli retired generals from the army, from the Mossad, from the Shabak, internal security, and from the police, with cumulative security experience of better than 7,000 years, and they tell you, here is the plan, and here is how it's going to work, chances are that the public will not dismiss it as easily as it dismisses it when people just throw out slogans rather than well thought through, well designed security plans. However, we reached a conclusion fairly quickly that there's no public attentiveness to security discussion of two-state solution. The moment you say two-state solution, somebody throws at you, there's nobody to talk to, there is no partner. We hear the same on the Palestinian side, that there's no partner in Jerusalem. But Israelis are convinced that there's no partner in Ramallah. And we decided, rather than argue the point, bypass it. Not argue if Abu Mazen is a partner, not questioning, is he partner for what? If you give him a good deal, will he become a partner? Anyone's guess. But leave it aside and say, all right, so conditions are not ripe for a two-state solution because of the Palestinians, because of the Israelis, because at the time the Americans were out to lunch and we didn't know which America will come back. We had some expectations, which did not materialize. The Europeans are busy with their own economic crisis, Brexit, Russian policy, what have you. The world is not, the stars are not aligned for a two-state solution at the moment. So what is the second best? What can be done in order to stop the slide towards closing the door on the two-state solution? Now, I personally don't believe that that door will ever be closed. But that's a different story. We can discuss it maybe later. But nonetheless, we decided to focus on what we call security first, and that is a pragmatic approach, as Susie mentioned, concrete steps that produce basically 3 or 4 results. One, they upgrade Israeli security under the interim situation of no two-state reality. Second, they provide the Palestinians with improved conditions and a hope, and I'll come back to the hope as a central feature in Israeli security, Palestinian hope as a central feature in Israeli security. I'll come back to that in a second. The third thing is improve Israeli standing in the region and beyond. And beyond, maybe BDS, pull the rug from under BDS, beyond maybe many other things. But the regional, as Susie also mentioned, is a very important feature in Israeli security. As Susie mentioned, the combined effect of Iranian meddling in regional affairs and the phenomenon of ISIS, on the other hand, created a community of interest between those pragmatic Arab regimes that survived the Arab Spring and Israel. And none of these countries, not us, nor them, can address these two challenges on their own. Only by harnessing the resources of all these countries in the region can we present a serious challenge both to Iran and to the ISIS phenomenon. However, while these countries intimate to us on a regular basis how eager they are to engage Israeli resources, intelligence and otherwise, in those efforts, they refuse to do so until there is some progress on the Palestinian issue. They have their own domestic constraints, and they fear that any leak of something like this happening may undermine regime stability back home. And therefore, the window of opportunity of a convergence of interest among these countries with Israel and Israel's potential integration into a regional security context is a major Israeli security interest. In the service of that security interest, progress on the Palestinian issue gets another dimension for Israeli security. So, security first came to present a very practical plan for improving security short-term, improving Palestinian conditions short-term, enhancing Palestinian hope, a political horizon in the sincerity of Israel's commitment to the two-state solution, and open the opportunity for beginning of regional integration. What we in IPF, I'm here schizophrenic, I'm both, what we in IPF have done is take certain key elements of the comprehensive plan of a series of pragmatic security steps, civil economic steps, and policy steps by the government of Israel, and accentuated them and made them available to the American public. And with this stuff, we're going to Washington, on the Hill, in the White House, and elsewhere, because we believe that once the Trump administration turns to deal with our issue, whether it does so by design, because it wants to, as the president expressed himself, or when it does so by need, because it decides to look the other way, things deteriorate, and something snaps, and it has to deal with it, because our thing have a nature of showing up on your doorstep when you're looking the other way. Whenever they do, we seem to believe that the pragmatic steps encapsulated in the two documents may serve as a very realistic meeting place between a prime minister who doesn't believe that conditions are ripe for a two-state solution and an administration that want to introduce a change in reality to accomplish something substantial, even if it is not ready for the kind of heavy lifting that will be required to accomplish the ambitious objective of a two-state solution. So we didn't know, as Susie said, that they will meet this week, but I think they knew that we are gathering, so they arranged the meeting.